it's Laura here from The Change, and I just want to welcome you to our mini-series of mini-sodes. We're bringing you a selection of our interviews from across seasons 1 to 3, where we've spoken to some amazing women, and we thought, well, why not take some of the bestest of the best bits and bring them to you in little sneaky snippets while we get busy preparing season 4 with a whole bunch of new interviews. So have a cup of tea, sit back and have a little listen to some of our highlights with some great banter and chats with some brilliant women. We'll catch you soon. Bye.
This week, we bring you the best bits from our episode with Tracey Williams. We interviewed Tracey in Season 1, Episode 2, and we talked to Tracey about embracing change and her secrets on how to get through it. We hope you enjoy.
When we think about change and hear phrases like, a change is as good as a holiday, we're often led to believe that change is good. But in your experience, when can change feel hard or challenging? We would love some examples.
Yeah, sure. Look, change is great when it's a holiday. Unfortunately, that's not usually why I see people. I think one of the major reasons that it's hard and that it's difficult is when it's taking us right outside of our comfort zone, when it's just not what we planned or were, looking forward to, for example. So it could also be something that triggers memories of previous experience of change. So that is another factor that plays in. But I think one of the main things is if it's not instigated by us, if it's outside of our control. So some examples of that: workplace change. It's a big one, and that could be loss of job. It could be, change of boss. It could be change of work team. It could be all sorts of, workplace changes. It could be a workplace injury, which is something that I work with a lot. Relationship changes, of course, things like divorce, or death of a spouse, that type of thing. Natural disasters, certainly something that are right outside of our control. Financial pressures to, we don't plan to be under pressure financially, but it really does happen quite a lot. Like I mentioned before, loss, and that could be the death of someone very close to us, or it could be a loss of something else, like our work role, a loss of our identity in terms of our parenting roles. It could be anything like that. And of course, health. It's a major change if you have a health event. And so there's all sorts of things tied up with that as well that make change very, very difficult. And we're often being told we have to change when there's been a major health event. It really feels outside of our control. Yeah.
It's interesting what you say there, because a lot of those things, grief, relationships, health, they all hit in midlife. And I think that it is that time of life where change suddenly comes upon us in such major ways.
Absolutely.
And do you think that it is an age-related thing? And does change get harder with age?
I think that's a really good question, because I think, there's multiple sort of answers to that. I thought about that, whole thing around, with age comes wisdom, and I think that's quite true. I think that, as we're aging, and certainly more so as we become, into those more twilight years, if you like. We've learnt to deal with lots of changes by this stage. I think that midlife area of change can be so multifaceted, with lots of things changing. And not only sort of if you're a parent and you've got children growing and all of that sort of thing and becoming adults themselves, but also you have aging parents who suddenly put a different demand on your life as well. So lots and lots of different reasons where age can be a factor, and not necessarily a negative. It could well be a positive, that we've learned a lot, and we've got ways of dealing and coping that we might not have had when we were teenagers, for example. It does depend on our life experience, I guess, as well in that regard. But yeah, it's difficult when we perceive a lack of sort of control in that change process as well. So I think it depends on how much we feel a sense of control over what's happening, and conversely, that sort of lack of control.
Yeah.
Someone else is pressing the buttons.
What are the best ways to approach change in your professional opinion? How do we help ourselves and our friends guard against, finding those changes hard?
Yeah, yeah. And I think whilst there's not a one size fits all, again, can't give you one of those. I think recognizing that we have choices is really useful. Recognizing that, yeah, in all situations, in all difficult situations, we just haven't got two or three choices. We just might not like some of them, and some of them may not be practical. We can always leave or run away or avoid. It's a coping strategy of sorts. It's usually not entirely useful in the long term. Sometimes in the short term it is. Sometimes if we're in a really bad situation, leaving is what we need to do. We can also stay and live life according to our values and do what we can to improve the situation that we're in. And the key to that is do what we can. We're very, very good, all of us, on focusing on what we can't do. Generally speaking, when you focus on what you can't do, you're not very happy. You're just stuck. Start moving into thinking about, well, what are the things that I can do? What small thing can I do today to help me manage this change? And it could be, I'm going to get up and get dressed today. It's those small things that, we start to build that resilience back. Because I think it gets a bit of a shake when we're going through change. Brick by brick, we can build that back in by making choices about what we do, about choosing to do what we can rather than focusing on what we can't do. So these are really important, sort of broad speaking ways of dealing with change, but it's really hard to sort of narrow it down unless we're dealing with something specific. Of course, we have the choice of staying put, not doing anything. You know, and sort of not making a difference to anything, and sometimes making it worse. That really isn't going to be the best choice that we can make. So focusing on the can-dos is really important. Maybe approaching things as a bit of a challenge. Bring it on. Let's see what we can do here. Let's sort of give ourselves a chance to build that resilience back. Brick by brick, focusing on what I can do. The other thing too that I think especially, is especially important is we don't have to do it on our own. Who in our lives can we reach out to? Ideally, reaching out to those people who we know are supportive, those people who will be on our team, be our coach, do the rah-rah from the sidelines. That sort of stuff is really helpful. And often we need that communication, massively important. If we're instigating change on others, we need to communicate. And I guess I'm, talking about workplaces and things like that here, and we can communicate too. If something's not going well for us, we need to let people know that we need help. And often we tend to try and soldier through these things on our own, and it's not always possible. Or we get there, but we're pretty shattered at the end of it, or we are, like Cathy says, rocking in a corner somewhere crying. That it's a strategy and it's a really good thing to do, but I think that's probably, in a broad way, one of the ways that we're best able to deal is doing what we can, reaching out, not being an island in this change.
Yeah. So it's sort of, it's community, it's communication,
Yes.
And it's also having that, focusing on what we can do, what we can control.
Yes.
And, you know, it's, I guess, as part of that, looking after ourselves,
Definitely.
in whatever shape or form that is,
Yes.
whether it's going for a walk, meditation, seeking professional help, etc. It's lots of that.
Yes.
Along
And
the
watching
way.
what we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, that again, you know, that
Mm.
language that we use towards ourselves. You know, what would I tell my best friend in this situation?
Mm.
How about I tell myself that? You know, and see what happens.
Is there a way we can kind of flip the script and find light in even the darkest or most difficult of changes? You know, I'm thinking about the big ones: grief, divorce.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
how do we cope in those kinds of situations which are so incredibly difficult, such big changes?
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good example. I think one of the things that we have this sort of sense that we need to be happy all the time. You know, that that we should be able to, you know, brush this off and soldier on, sort of thing. And we tend to avoid allowing emotions and feelings to just be. And when I'm working with clients who are grieving, it's almost like giving them permission to have those emotions, to cry if they want to just sit and be sad. Because it's normal. It's okay. You know, we don't have to be completely under control of all of those emotions all of the time. We are allowed to be sad when something sad has happened. You know, so in some ways, I guess what I'm saying is it's okay to have these emotions, and it's okay to sit with them. However, we don't have to express our feelings to people either. You know, sometimes people say, "Oh, you need to go and talk to someone." Not necessarily. Try it and see. You know, try it and see. If you're not sure whether it's going to be helpful, try it and see.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll have, you know, over the years I'll have clients who will say to me, "I have never talked about this stuff to anybody."
Wow.
You know, and they will express some surprise and satisfaction that it's been helpful for them. Not everybody. Some people will say, "Yeah, this isn't for me," and that's perfectly fine. You know, again, we're all individuals. You know, we're all going to have a different sense of what's useful for us. But I can't emphasize enough that need to have self-compassion and to care for yourself. You know, I think we're all a little bit deficient in that area. We're, you know, if we're parents, we're just so far down the pecking order. You know, we're doing everything for everyone else. You know, and that then tends to, you know, flow right across workplaces, everything else. We're busy looking after everyone else, and we forget about ourselves. So that flippant word's really nice. What would you do for someone else in this situation? How about you do that for you? It's a good way to go. It's a good. I like that term, flip it.
Yeah.
Flip it around.
Flip it around. No,
Yeah.
that's so true. You just have to put yourself sometimes at the center and say, well, yeah, what do I need?
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.